Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Sonic Frontiers. We are going to Knuckles again because I guess I don't have much else to do.
To be fair, your exploration of these islands are very front-loaded.
Yeah.
To the point where you're spending all the time collecting all the necessary emblems, and then you can just kind of beeline through plot.
Well, that's kind of typical of a lot of these kinds of games, where you explore everything so thoroughly that once you're finally going for those last few things, you're not really exploring anymore. You know the whole landscape, and you're just kind of zooming to the next relevant piece. That's pretty common in all these kinds of games. Like, I know a lot of people who played Breath of the Wild ignored all the divine beasts and then just beelined to each one and did them all in a row at the end.
Like, literally beelined.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's unfortunate, though, because actually getting the divine beasts cleared early gives you some tools that you can use to get all the other stuff.
Yeah, but you know, so you don't know that at the time.
Yeah, but I mean, what do you want to do? Do you want to use Rivali's Gale, or do you want to use a tree at Mach 3?
Well, I don't necessarily just mean that stuff. I mean stuff like the bow you get from Rivali, which is really good for passing like the riding and shooting at things minigame. Like, it's basically the only easy way to get the second set of horse gear from that minigame. And, you know, sometimes it's just really good to, you know, be able to take a few hits from a boss that's in your way and revive with Mipha's Grace and not have to waste your goddamn hearty foods all the time.
Yeah, you have so many apples, you can just slam them in your mouth and you're good.
Oh no, the key to abusing Breath of the Wild's cooking system is to know that if you cook anything with a hearty ingredient at all, it will always cure max health. Always. So just stock up on hearty truffles and hearty radishes and hearty everything else.
So my one complaint about that game, that I have a couple of others. It's a great game, but like one of my main okay, Sonic, sure. One of my main nitpicks about that game is that there's no way to save recipes. And like the only things that tell you how certain recipes like even happen is there's like sometimes a poster on the wall that will tell you how to cook certain things.
Yeah, and like the only time it ever comes up is when like one or two NPCs give you a quest that says figure out how to cook this or that thing and show me.
Yeah, like
it's
just
kinda
a cookbook would be nice. You know, like that just tracked all of the stuff that you had already cooked.
You're talking like within the game itself and not having to rely on a guide or something.
Yeah, like everything else in that game is in the game itself. I don't know why recipes aren't.
It's like, you know, I really enjoy that kind of thing in like the Trails series and stuff because there's always like a cooking completion cookbook thing that you can do. You find all the ingredients and you cook every recipe at least once, and it's a fun little element of completion that you can do while you're doing other things. I feel like Breath of the Wild was a game built for a more in-depth crafting and cooking system than we ultimately got, and they just sort of ran out of time halfway through.
They might have started with something more complex and scaled it down. Is also because that's a typical Nintendo thing, is they don't generally have the same amount of in-depth, very menu-y complex systems. They typically prefer something simpler. So I wouldn't be surprised if they intentionally left it simple.
If I remember correctly, we mutually agreed that Breath of the Wild was the game we'd probably never do a commentary on because of just the nature of the game itself and how the player approaches it.
Videos, yeah.
But Sonic does something similar. It's like there's literally no hesitancy. It's like this fucking
Sonic pays our bills,
money,
Sean.
money,
You know this.
No, but nothing pays our bills at BrainScratch.
Look, I wouldn't say that Sonic has done something similar to Breath of the Wild here. It's like they're superficially similar because they have some similar musical choices.
Yeah, because Sonic walks on grass and Link walks on grass.
They have similar musical choices. You can look at a horizon on Island 1 and see a tower, and it's kind of like the Sheikah Tower a little bit, except they don't serve even remotely the same purpose, so it's not like the Sheikah Tower at all. But like this is
no, but they share the same sky though.
Aside from having a semi-open world structure, they don't play very similarly. I can already tell.
Sonic has a semi-open world structure, but is still a stage-by-stage experience. Breath of the Wild is an open world game. There is nothing to it other than the open world. It's actually like one of the best constructed open worlds that I've ever played, in fact. Because like partly because they got the Xenoblade guys to help them build the world, and that's cool. You know, they know what they're doing. But like it's, you can't really, this is a 20-something part playthrough. Breath of the Wild, I did start a recording of Breath of the Wild at one point, like a year ago, because I was thinking that, you know, we could do it after all. I was 20 parts in, and I'd barely gotten anything done. Because that's just how that game is. You know?
What Zelda game should we do next? You know, say in the comments below.
They're going to say Skyward Sword, and then we're going to be like, bah! Like that one meme.
Well, I mean, Skyward Sword's kind of the next one on our list.
We haven't done Link to the Past or Link Between Worlds yet, and that would also not take like 10 years.
Well, no, but we also haven't chronologically gone through the 2D Zeldas yet at all. I think maybe we did Zelda 1 at some point, but that's about it.
Yeah, we did, because I was bad at it.
Yeah, but that's about it. We haven't done like a Link to the Past or anything 2D. Like, if we were gonna do that, then I would say fucking Link's Awakening and the Oracle games. Not in that order, because that's backwards. But, you know. Those are games that deserve a commentary. But, like, the next game in our 3D Zelda chronology is Skyward Sword. And
Radio Ocarina of Time it is.
I feel like we've been putting that off for the same reason that I've been putting off Devil May Cry 2, because I don't think any of us actually wants to record it. Like...
Well, no one said you had to do Devil May Cry 2. You could just skip to 3.
Well, yeah. I mean, I keep intending to do that. I fully intend to skip to 3 and 4.
There is something to be said though about the potential entertainment value of, after finally crossing that hurdle, you're able to commentate it and reflect on what exactly is it you don't like about anything that you see on the screen.
I mean, for maybe like 5 parts, but not for like the 60-part game Skyward Sword would be.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like people have been giving Skyward Sword a little too much credit lately, because we got the Switch.
Too much credit.
We got the HD remaster and all, but and you know, all the people who have a soft spot for Skyward Sword have been coming out and saying, you know, Skyward Sword is pretty good, actually. You shouldn't be hating on it so much. And people have been giving Skyward Sword another chance, and they've been finding its good qualities, and maybe underestimating its bad qualities a little in the excitement that brings.
I would say that's always been the case though with Skyward Sword.
Yeah, that's the Zelda cycle in a nutshell.
That's every cycle of every game. Like, come on, as Sonic fans, can we say like, yeah, it's a Zelda cycle?
Oh man,
like,
Sonic, man, Sonic Forces was great the whole time, guys.
I mean, going back to Wind Waker, for example.
Yeah.
What people have generally found is what a lot of people have always been saying, and that's the fact that, you know, a lot of the initial hate for that game was purely based on its visual style, but, you know, now that we're past that point, people don't really care.
The distaste for Wind Waker was only a pre-release thing, though. Like, once people actually played it, like, complaints about sailing aside, I don't remember seeing much distaste for Wind Waker after it came out.
Well, part of the other reason for that is that around the time it came out, the internet wasn't really, like, people didn't.
No, it was because that was early 2000s.
It was before social
message boards
media,
were,
though, you know.
It was before social media, but message boards were
basically people got stuck in like echo chambers where only one opinion about the game.
It's totally different now.
Oh, we would never echo chamber anything. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's easier to hear the other side now than it was back then, because you get stuck in a little community bubble, right? So everyone around you would be saying that Final Fantasy VIII sucks because Spoonie said so, and you wouldn't hear quite so much of the other side. You wouldn't get YouTube recommendations for this one video that says, you know, Final Fantasy VIII isn't actually that bad. Y'all are overreacting, guys. Here's a clickbait thumbnail for you saying exactly what I just said. And
how many red circles?
And like it, as a result, you wouldn't get like quite so many differing opinions. You just have the one meme review that everyone repeats the opinion of, you know. It doesn't help, that at the time, it was also fashionable for game reviews to be screamy and negative. So, there's that.
Yeah. Yeah, that is a good point, where when everybody wanted to be the angry video game nerd, you couldn't talk about anything good ever.
Which is funny, because some of the AVGN's best reviews are the ones where he gives positive, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Or like a retrospective at the very least. Yeah, I would agree.
Like, one of my favorite ones is the Ghostbusters review, and that ends, like, with him liking the Genesis game, and it's like, what? It's good? And then he's so flabbergasted, it's awesome.
Yeah, but, like, you know, one of the things that makes the AVGN good in the first place wasn't just because that he was screamy and negative. It's because he's also analytical enough to explain what's good about things. So when he says something is bad, he usually has an example of something that's good to give you an idea of where his mind is.
Have you guys ever watched him do Monster Madness or anything like that?
Yeah, the Cinemassacre stuff?
Yeah, like, he's a very thoughtful person, and, like, does have a lot of legitimate, like, cinema critique stuff posted, where he's very thoughtful and talks about why things are and aren't good.
Arguably, he knows film better than he knows video games.
I wouldn't be surprised if he does, because film is.
It's what he studied.
Well, his love of film was like partly what had him do the early angry video game nerd stuff in the first place. It was a video project first and foremost.
Yeah, it was just a school project, and he was like, "Oh, I like video games. I can just make a video about me being angry at an old game I played."
Yeah.
He uploaded it on the internet, and he's been doing it ever since.
Okay, so we're playing Sky Sanctuary. Again, I'm pretty sure this is the classic version of the level, but it's not the entire classic version of the level.
You can tell if it's classic or not if it has the classic springs.
Oh, yeah.
They only do that. Yeah, they only do that if it's directly from a classic level.
The other thing, though, is that at the end of this level, they have
vocal track in the cyberspace level.
Yeah. Oh, same composer as Forces. So
the other thing, though, is that at the end of the classic Sky Sanctuary and Generations, there were 3 different exits to the level that all led to the goal ring. So you had to take a different path. So this isn't that one. Weird.
Well, it could be pieces of it. Too, though, to be fair.
Sometimes they do split up the level layouts into different versions.
But again, generally you can tell by the gimmicks. Like if it's a dead giveaway if you see a classic spring. But God, I don't like. Yeah, this is the classic level because you got the classic spring there. But
actually, what I've noticed about Frontiers is that it uses the classic springs in 2D sections, just as a general rule.
Yeah,
which is interesting.
You say interesting. I think it's just reusing something they already have, because I don't see any sort of anything special or unique about them using a classic spring for this one particular 2D section as opposed to just the modern spring.
They used a classic spring at the beginning, but they also used modern springs when it was bouncing Sonic from one spring to another. So it's a bit of a mix.
Yeah,
I think they started using classic springs in mixture with modern springs because the classic springs were supposed to signal something else to the player. Like you're allowed to maneuver in the air after you hit this spring. You're expected to maneuver in the air and platform to somewhere. Whereas the modern springs just sort of bounce you from spring to spring. And
it's meant as a transition.
Yeah, and it's like using the different springs is a quick, easy way to tell the player what to expect from this particular spring and its place in the level, you know? But they don't use the yellow or red classic springs in 3D, partly because I think the red springs would just blend in with the regular springs, but also because they don't really expect you to do any spring-based platforming in 3D anymore. Like, when you hit a spring, it's usually launching you to something else you can interact with rather than being the main means of interaction.
I suppose, yeah.
I'm getting a bit technical here, but that's the sense that I'm getting from it.
You're describing the different purposes of both of the springs. It's fine.
Well, I mean, this is an often underestimated aspect of level design, but you have to be able to communicate to the player in a short, simple, basic way what they should expect to be doing in a particular section, you know? So, I mean, how do I put this? Okay, have you ever played old Tomb Raider?
The classic one, yes.
Have you ever noticed how much time you spend in those older games just looking around trying to figure out where the hell you're supposed to be going?
Yes. That's that entire game.
Yes, kind of. And to be fair, in that particular experience, the feeling of being a bit lost, isolated, and not knowing where you're supposed to be going or what you're supposed to be doing is part of the fun. It's an acquired taste, but it's part of the fun. In a game like Sonic the Hedgehog, you really don't want that feeling to be much of a part of the experience at all. You want the player to be able to glance at something.
You get Shadow the Hedgehog if you have that experience.
Yeah, you want the player to be able to glance at something and know immediately what they're supposed to be doing with it, you know?
So that you can quickly react to it.
Yeah.
And hence, like, feeding into the appeal and aesthetic of the character.
Yeah. So you see what's coming up, you react to it fast, you keep the flow going, you know exactly where you're going. And in Sonic Frontier's case, on those occasions where you stop and look around, you don't have to take too much time to think about what you're seeing. So using different types of springs to communicate different platforming ideas to the player in certain areas is a good way for the player to gain the understanding they need to keep the flow up as they play through the game and learn how it works, you know? So, in this case, even though it's an open world, and even though you're collecting all of this stuff, you never really stop moving unless you want to. And that's the important part.
There are multiple architectural styles across the island. It's different types of stone, too. Plus, these
Yeah, gray stone, white stone.
I like how Knuckles is like, Sonic's like, this stuff reminds me of stuff on Angel Island, and Knuckles like, why? Because it's made of stone. Like he's a bit derisive about.
That's racist, Sonic.
he's a bit derisive about Sonic's lack of understanding of ancient ruins. So it kind of plays into that old kind of neglected idea of Knuckles as a treasure hunter. Knuckles would know this shit because he had an Indiana Jones phase at one point, you know?
He had a cool hat.
He had a cool hat, yeah. He was the main character of Pitfall 3D. They just made the character in Pitfall 3D look human because they were racist against the echidnas.
It was like an echidna would never do this.
There's a Pitfall 3D.
Yeah, it's a PlayStation 1 game. It's kind of okay.
Is it bad?
It's okay.
It's okay. That's surprising, actually. I would have expected it to be very bad.
It's just kind of a top-down PlayStation 1 platformer of not much note. You know, it's a fun enough game. The main character kind of talks like Ash from Evil Dead, though. It's a little cheesy.
I mean, I guess that's kind of what they were going for, because like cheesy adventure story stuff, I suppose.
It's like you would expect Pitfall 3D to be something like Tomb Raider, but it's actually just a kind of really simple platformer. But yeah, I mean, I played it as a kid on a demo disc. It was okay. I bought it at a convention as an adult, played a little bit of it. It was okay. But like I wouldn't class it as one of the gems of the PlayStation era, if that makes sense. It's just kind of a game that existed at one point.
Oh, geez, yeah. Okay. Have they done anything in modding to make the pop-in less obnoxious?
I don't think anything can be done about it because it's tied to the engine.
I don't think that's something that can be done because I think it's something that the engine does specifically to prevent memory leaks from happening. Like it unloads things that are a certain distance away from Sonic so that it doesn't keep too much loaded at once. I'm sure at some point someone will find a techno-wizardry way to turn that function off so that you can see everything in a level at once. But in that case, you would need a computer with a hell of a lot of RAM in order to run that smoothly. I mean, when your computer does overflow from its RAM limit, it will start, copying to the page file. But at that point, unless you're playing everything off of an SSD, that's going to slow your game down. So that presents a different problem.
I'm very conflicted about those conversations because on one hand, it is nice to see them bringing back lore and actually like, it's weird to say paying it respect because there's a lot of Sonic lore is bad. At the same time, it does feel like, hey, Knuckles, this is like that time we were in Angel Island zone, right? And it's like, oh, Sonic.
It could be gratuitous.
Okay,
Yeah.
that is one thing, but one thing that I don't like is the way this game handles flashbacks, because like you can really tell that the script was written and then they didn't give it much attention in production whenever a flashback happens in particular. Because when Knuckles is looking at this particular building and he's having an emotional moment thinking of Angel Island, and he really wants to help the Cocos or whatever because Angel Island, and he empathizes with them or whatever. There's a flashback of him laughing at Sonic at the beginning of Sonic 3, and it's like, okay, you picked the one...
What does that got to do with anything?
You're trying to communicate that Knuckles is thinking of Angel Island, so why did you pick the one screenshot that has no Angel Island architecture?
Yeah, why not like him guarding the Master Emerald or some of the shit?
Have we seen that bit yet?
No.
Not yet. We're going to.
Do they like
if not this
remake
part,
it
the
in
next
the
part.
engine, or do they?
No,
It's
it's literally just a screenshot of Sonic Origins.
And
What?
And the point is that they put very little effort into the production of the game after the script was written. So there are things that Ian Flynn wrote that would have absolutely worked if the people in charge of making the cutscenes and directing the cutscenes and storyboarding the cutscenes had known what they were doing, or spent more than 5 minutes on it. So that's another aspect that I'm referring to when I
Also,
say,
would have paid greater service to like one of the twists of this game's later reveals.
yeah, it's just like, you know, I said before that the cutscenes in this game, don't actually do the script much justice, and that's a big one. The other big one is Sage's emotional moment on Island 4, or Island 3 rather, where she's listening to Tales and she's like, and she like has a realization, and there's this musical montage and it's fading through flashbacks of her talking to Eggman and the other Eggman cutscenes that are not emotional at all, because there are no emotional cutscenes for her to flash back to, because all of the emotional material was in the Egg memos. So,
Oops.
so the scene just doesn't work cinematically. Also, the music is incredibly cheesy, but I could have let that pass if there were like actual scenes for her to flash back to that made sense in the context of the script, but there weren't.
At this point in the story, does Sonic know that Sage is Eggman's robot or AI or whatever?
No.
I do not think that he figures that out until it's properly until he sees Eggman and Sage in the same place at the end. The player can figure it out much earlier if they're going after the egg memos, but
Well, they reveal that to you like on the first island.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say, or the first Eggman,
or the
cutscene.
Eggman cutscenes. Yeah, those are a bit weird because I'm not sure how much progress on an island triggers those. It's weird. But like, you know, the player can figure it out. Sonic doesn't figure it out till later. Let's see. Okay, another cyberspace level. How many of these are there again? All right, there are 7 cyberspace levels per island, except for the last island, which has 9 of the fucking things.
It's still so weird to me that this would, like, you would think that this would be one of the highlights of the game, and I'm sure that this probably was intended to be one of the highlights of the game, but the way you guys are talking about it, it seems like this is part of the game that nobody wants to do.
I don't think cyberspace at any point in time was designed to be a highlight. It was just a distraction, because they every time they're talking about this game in like press or anything like that, they are always talking about the open zone stuff.
Yeah, the cyberspace levels are treated as a side attraction, as special stages again, but it's.
I mean, but they're the closest emulation to old Sonic, though, is the thing, which is.
But they are not the reason you play the game.
I mean, that's true. I guess it's just like, this is the kind of.
It's just strange to think about. Yeah, I get it.
Well, I reflect upon that in my video specifically. It's kind of weird, like how what's considered this game's weakest moments were considered like the best things about Sonic 10 years ago.
To be fair, they probably wouldn't be considered the weakest moments if they'd gotten the control right. It's just
I would agree on that one.
It's
yeah.
just really
But even then,
awkward, you know?
even if the control was better, I'd still have the problem with the aesthetic being samey and limited.
Yeah, it's the thing where the complaint for the past 15 years has been we are tired of these aesthetics, and they bring back the exact aesthetics everybody's tired of. Which is Sky Sanctuary, Chemical Plane.
Which is why I'm hoping this is the last game to do this. I know it's way too early to say.
Like 3 games,
Granted, yeah. That's why I'm saying I'm not being too hopeful on that one, but I'm hoping this is the last time they really do this because everyone, folks have said nothing but good things about the open zone stuff. Everyone almost, I'm not going to say unanimously because, Sonic fans are Sonic fans, but I've seen a lot more critique towards the cyberspace stuff than the open zone stuff. And I'm hoping they take that lesson to heart and say, listen, just don't do this anymore.
Oh, hey, I got all 4 in one go. That rarely happens.
Do it again. I wasn't watching.
What?
Just scroll back on the video.
Yeah, no. Then I'll be honest.
Lewis, record the whole playthrough all over again.
Start over again.
You made a mistake at one point, and this sucks. So we need to do the.
Did you see how you missed that rainbow loop like 3 parts ago? Amateur.
Anyway, the cyberspace levels aesthetic would still be a complaint, but I feel like if they were more fun and flowing to play, it would be less of a sticking point. But because there are mechanical problems with the cyberspace levels, the aesthetic problems that are attached to those problems stick out more in people's minds, because you're thinking of everything bad about the level all at once because there isn't really anything especially standout good about them either.
Yeah, it's more just the best things about them so far has been it's neat to see an SA2 style level with these kinds of controls. And that's it.
That's not exactly.
That's about it. Yeah,
it's not exactly a huge plus. So,
but I'm just
it never transcends the point of that's neat.
Yeah,
it never goes to oh my god that's amazing. It's that's cool.
What do you think that if they had? I was gonna say if they had just given the levels the aesthetics from those old stages, it would be better. It would certainly fit the cyberspace thing they're talking about, but you're also then asking them to make something like 40 some odd level aesthetics for these 1 minute sections, which seems impossible.
They don't have to make new aesthetics. They could just rip more assets from more games instead of using the same 4 aesthetics over and over.
Do you think? Actually, I'm just thinking about this now, but do you think instead of just using the aesthetics from the games they're referencing, what if they just kept using, for Island 2 example, the desert aesthetic? What if you were going through Skyrail, Metal Harbor, but with the desert aesthetic of Island 2?
I feel then you have the problem of these sections are also intended to be a break from the aesthetic of that island. So you then get tired of the desert aesthetic or the sad plains aesthetic more quickly.
Yeah. I'd say that would be a concern, yeah. The other thing, though, I guess, is that at that point, they're committing to the desert aesthetic, so it would raise a question in a lot of players' minds. Why aren't there desert-themed things to do in these stages, When you play a desert level in Classic Sonic, when you're playing Sandopolis, there's desert-related things to do. There's sinking sand and stone golems and all of that stuff.
Ghosts.
Yeah. Ghosts in a haunted pyramid. That's not exactly desert themed, but it fits. It fits the location.
That happens.
It fits the location. Is what I'm saying. It makes you think of something that you might encounter in a specific place. Just slapping a desert aesthetic on a Green Hill Zone Sonic Generations level layout would not really gel.
Well, that's also just Sandhill from Forces.
Yeah.
It's almost like they've done that 6 times.
I mean, I liked the idea of Green Hill being desertified by Eggman as a level concept. I just would have liked it in a game that did other more original level concepts alongside it.
Didn't they do that in Sonic 4 Episode 2? Where they made a level.
Well, no, you're thinking of Oil Desert Zone, but that wasn't a Green Hill-esque design.
I thought that there was a level in that game where it's like a green Sonic-y type thing, but then it was partly eggified.
No. The only green level in that game that I can think of is the first level, which was Sylvania Forest, but that was an aquatic ruin level.
Sylvania Castle.
Sylvania Castle, right? Basically, that was just aquatic ruin with some more castle added to it.
I'm not surprised that I barely remember anything about anything Sonic 4. Though, so yeah.
Sonic 4 Episode 2's level themes are okay. They just aren't. They're just too little, too late after Sonic 4 Episode 1 was so lame. You know, like if we had started with Sonic 4 Episode 2, with a level like Sylvania Castle as the opener, I could see it being fairly striking. But we had to deal with not Green Hill, not Metropolis Zone, not Labyrinth Zone, and what was the fourth one? Not Casino Night, right?
Casino Night, Casino Street.
Yeah. And then
the fact that you remember it specifically Casino Street is I was gonna say impressive, but it's not actually.
No, it's pathetic.
Yeah.
Yeah.